Hey y'all, Daniel Aaron here, your guide to vibrant living. Continuing, diving deeper in this awesome month whose theme is gurus, saviors and saints, con men or crooks. They're not all men, of course, but you know what I mean. Love to hear from you. What's your experience? And this time we're diving into one called Scientology. Scientology is not a guru. Maybe it's a cult, maybe it's a movement, maybe it's a religion. We'll leave those distinctions aside for now. I'll tell you a little bit of my own experience, give you some recommendations, and again, would love to hear from you. Now, L. Ron Hubbard created it. First Dianetics, it became Scientology, and that dude, I tell you, was tapped into some great wisdom. Whether there were other components, well, probably so. Movie, The Master, very interesting, related. Now, I'd heard, of course, of L. Ron Hubbard as a spiritual aspirant, someone on the spiritual path. I'd heard of him, I'd heard of Scientology, but I didn't really know much about it until, actually quite a ways along. I was living in Bali and there was somebody I was dating virtually or online, and they were in another continent, and we'd been having video calls and getting to know each other and falling in love, really. And at some point I got this serious message from her, like, I gotta tell you something, and it was clear. It was one of those ones like, I gotta tell you, and after you hear this, you might not want to have anything to do with me. So I was like, what you gonna say? I don't know, scary, and she's like, I'm into Scientology. It's been something that I discovered at this really rough point in my life, and I got into it, and it's helped me a lot, and it's transformed me. There, I've said it. So I got that message, and I was like, okay. It's not so bad. I thought it was going to be something worse. Well, again, I didn't know much about Scientology, its reputation, that some people were really against it, some people were really for it. So, she was somebody really sound, a really wonderful person. And clearly, she'd had some positive experiences. So I said, wonderful, great. I want to learn more about it. And I did. Then, and most of what I learned and what she shared with me was quite positive. I investigated and found other people had some other perspectives, but hey, that's neither here nor there. I'm not diving into that. It seems to be helping her, so good for us. A few years later, I was in the midst of leading a yoga teacher training. And one of my favorite things about the trainings was the community that we created and the discussions that we had. And one night at dinner, a friend of mine, a student there, says, have you seen the movie Going Clear? I was like, no, what's that? Well, she tells me it's a movie about Scientology. Oh, cool, I want to check that out. Well, I did, and I recommend it. And right around the same time, in a seemingly unrelated incident, someone who was very close to me was doing some therapy sessions or healing sessions or something like that with a therapist who we had high regard for, and she was doing a process with her which she said was called clearing, and she had learned it from her time with Scientology. She was not a Scientologist. She didn't identify with that. She wasn't proselytizing Scientology. However, she'd learned this very cool technique, and I won't go into that, but this very cool technique for clearing stuff from the past. Well, sorry, this could be a spoiler alert. I think it'll still be fine, though, and they'll say it in a different way in the movie. One of the things that they point to in this film, Going Clear, and this is one of the things that's really important to look at when it comes to gurus and cults, is that typically ones that are nefarious, ones that are not really doing good for us, which I know can be subjective, though we could probably all agree on that if you look at something like the Jonestown Massacre, or some of the ones that have really gone bad. Right? One of the hallmarks is in the cult, and they talk about this both in Robert Cialdini's book Influence, as well as The Guru Papers, both great books on this topic. One of the hallmarks of these sort of problematic cults or gurus is they convey to the member, the one who's part of it, the student, the disciple, that if they were to leave, it would be bad for them. Right? They create in some way a dependence on staying with it. And that, to me, y'all, red flag. Same thing with a teacher, with a therapist, anybody. If they're creating in you a dependence on them, be very weary. Because what any of us should be doing when we are in a helping role, guru, therapist, teacher, coach, whatever it is, we need to be empowering the person that we are serving, right? Creating them to be more dignified, more at cause, less at effect. So, one of the things that's part of the clearing technique, at least as is reported, is that while going into the person's subconscious, while digging in, which can be, of course, very important. You know, sometimes we need to look at that which is below the surface. Limiting beliefs, programs. While they do that, under the guise of clearing it, they're actually implanting traumas that maybe did not even exist, which limit one's capacity, which result in the person thinking, there's something really wrong with me. I'm messed up. I need help. I need them. Well, so I watched the film and I was like, wow, I've learned a lot about this particular organization, and I'm sure there are many great things about it also, some that were quite alarming. Meanwhile, my friend who was experiencing these clearing sessions ended up being really traumatized or re-traumatized, re-experiencing some trauma that she had experienced when she was a little girl. Now, I don't believe that the therapist or healer she was working with was trying to do that in order to manipulate her or bring her into. What I do believe, though, is that that technique stirred up some things in her subconscious, in her past, stirred them up, disturbed them, perturbed them without resolving them, and left her re-traumatized. And so in that PTSD state, that trauma-sensitive state, where everything seems like it's a danger. Now, great work on trauma. I'm not going into that in depth by any means in this video, right? Highly recommend Peter Levine, Awakening the Tiger, something like that. Very close to that classic book on trauma. In any case, actually, I'll give you this part too. Last part I'll say here now is, my belief is we don't need to go after the things that are buried deep inside us. We don't have to go looking for ants at the picnic. We don't have to re-traumatize. We don't need to cathart. We need to look at who we want to become, the beliefs that are in line with that. And yes, be real about and face obstacles, challenges, pains, difficulties, though not go necessarily deep into them, right? That's not necessarily helpful or fitting to the times we're in. Ooh, I feel like I opened a big can of worms there. So, without going too far into that, I hope that that's a useful tidbit for you on Scientology. I would love to hear your perspective, your experience about it. Let me know. Is what I'm talking about crazy? Do you resonate with it? What's your conclusion around it? And we'll leave it there. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for being dedicated to your vibrant life. Aloha, y'all.